today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about
how to be a strong leader and win back your wife. I want to be really clear. It's not like men are supposed to be the leaders. It's more like human beings are all meant to lead at one time or another. And when we lead from our strengths. Some of us just don't lead at all. We're just fine with being taken care of. Some of us just want to be taken care of. Your wife doesn't want that either. That isn't going to work. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're talking about self-awareness. It's the key to being a real leader. It's also the key to winning her back, right? And if you're listening to this podcast, the chances are your marriage is not where you want it to be. And you don't really understand why. Maybe you've been yesing, and somehow she's never happy, no matter how hard you try to please her. Or maybe you've been doing everything you were taught you were supposed to do. You've been providing, working your buns off. You put the roof over their head. You've got the right car. Maybe you got a nice membership to the country club. Everything seems to be okay, but you're growing further and further apart. These were all signs of failed leadership. And I want to be really clear. It's not like men are supposed to be the leaders. It's more like human beings are all meant to lead at one time or another. And when we lead from our strengths, but we can't lead from our strengths if there ain't nobody to follow. And what's going on with a lot of folks right now is they don't want to follow. So the bad news is you haven't been intimate in a while. No matter how hard you try, it's never enough. The good news is if you take the prescription I'm writing here, not only will you start to feel more successful within yourself, but you'll get reconnected in your marriage. And this is possible and doable. I have seen countless couples go through it. But the deal is, you got to be willing to look. I had John Schinnerer on the podcast, Dr. John Schinnerer. We were talking about the man box, and he was pointing out that 72% of people interviewed think they're very self-aware, but about 12% really are. So what is this self-awareness thing, and what are we talking about? And let's just throw this in too. What the hell does it mean to be a leader anyway? I'm going to start with the self-awareness thing. Self-awareness is like peeling an onion. What a lot of us do is maybe we go see a therapist and we peel away a layer or two and we go, wow, I really know myself now. And then we slip back into old habits because understanding on its own will not solve the problem. Understanding is great, but what we find as we're peeling the onion is there's some old emotions there. There might even be some beliefs about ourselves and about life that were implanted in us or that we absorbed that aren't helping us or serving us today. Yeah, it worked in our family of origin, but it's not working in our marriage. And the reason is times they are changing. It's not that your family of origin was so terrible, though it might have been. I'm not discounting that. It's that when we learn those lessons, things have changed so much in our culture in 10 or 20 years that those lessons need to be altered or even have no application today. So the lessons can be, coaches love to call them limiting beliefs. I'd like to say it's more like a strategy or an assumption. And when we have a strategy, it's usually because we believe it's going to work. That might be why we call it a limiting belief. But when we have a strategy, strategies are very context specific. And the strategy that works with our parents is not the strategy that's going to work with our wife, most likely. Let's talk about leadership briefly. Without going into the models of leadership espoused by business leaders, I just want to talk about leadership from an emotional stance. There are leaders, people who lead with anger. If you don't do this, this is what's going to happen. I think the word is authoritarian in parenting. You do it or else. Very limited context that that's effective in. The only time it pays to be a scary leader is when you need to be scarier than where you're going. They're more scared of you than where they're going, so they move forward. Most marriages aren't operating that way today. Where you're going may not be that scary. Some of us think that we are leading when we just go, hey, you know what? I'm earning a lot of money and I put some away for our future and I've taken care of all this stuff. Whatever you want from there is fine. That's more like unilateral decision making. I've made decisions about this. You can make decisions about that. It's not true leadership. It's kind of loosey-goosey. And honestly, your wife probably doesn't want that from you. She wants a partner. Partners don't lead like that. Some of us just don't lead at all. We're just fine with being taken care of. Some of us just want to be taken care of. Your wife doesn't want that either. That isn't going to work. What any human being wants from a leader, a good leader, is they want a leader who is self-aware. So they're not letting their stuff from them. Remember the strategies and the old emotions? They're not letting their old emotions and their stuff get in the way of their relationship. Or if you're leading a company, they're not getting in the way of their company. They want a leader who also understands them. They want a leader who understands them, knows what their needs are, and is able to balance the needs of the led with the needs of the mission that the leader is leading them on. Not with the needs of the leader, with the needs of the mission the leader is leading them on. So when somebody allows themselves to be led, they want to make sure that the leader is clear about the mission and is willing to sacrifice some of their own stuff to achieve the mission and is willing to take into consideration their stuff in terms of the mission. When somebody allows someone to lead, they want to be able to apply their strengths, their skills, what makes them unique, their passion to accomplishing the mission. In fact, a good leader, when they see that someone who's being led by them knows more than they do and is more passionate about something, will allow that person to take the lead, right? The best leaders know when to give off leadership and when to take it back on. In order to do that, we need to be emotionally aware. Now, guys, if you listen to the Man Box episode with John, or if you've been listening to this podcast for the last year, what you know is in the thousands of years that we've had a male-dominated society, men haven't done a great job of being emotionally aware. In fact, we've been taught, trained, conditioned to avoid certain feelings. Self-awareness is about peeling away the teaching, peeling away the conditioning, peeling away the examples, peeling away the acculturalization, peeling away the lessons, and allowing ourselves to have those feelings in an appropriate way at an appropriate time. And we're going to do future episodes on this. I'm not going to go deep with this now. In order to be a good leader who allows others to lead in their strengths, we need to know our own limitations. In order to be a good leader who allows others to lead in their strengths, we need to know when we might not be up to leading. A good leader excuses themselves and puts someone else in charge when they know they're in an emotional state that's not appropriate to the mission. In order to do that, fellas, what we need to do is have those feelings. Let me tell you my story about Brad and Gwen. You remember Brad and Gwen? Brad and Gwen are always my story. Brad and Gwen are actually different people. It's just the same names. I use those names to protect people who I've been working with. So let me tell you a story about Brad and Gwen. Brad and Gwen had been married for a number of years. When Brad decided it was time, he didn't decide it was time. He unconsciously decided it was time. Brad had some feelings coming up about an unresolved situation in his life. He had a child from an earlier marriage that he'd never been in touch with. He had completely, 86, bad term. He had completely ignored this child. He'd gotten a young lady pregnant. She'd gone and had the child, and he had had nothing to do with it. She had said to him, I don't want you anything to do with it. And he'd gone along with it at the time. But now, married to Gwen with children, he was starting to realize that he had failed. At that time, he was feeling very immature, but he had failed as a father. He had failed to be responsible as a father. Let's not get into what responsible as a father means right now. But he had tremendous guilt, shame, sadness, hurt over it. Hurt that that girl that he impregnated didn't want him to be around. Sadness that he had not been connected to that child. guilt that he hadn't done something about it in any way, shame that he felt in some way something must be wrong with him, that this situation had unfurled the way that it had. And so he started to talk to Gwen about it. And just imagine you're Gwen and your husband, Brad, is talking to you about a child he had with another woman. But Gwen had emotional awareness and fortitude. And she knew not to start dumping on Brad some of the feelings that were coming up for her. And believe me, feelings were coming up for her. Instead, she allowed Brad to unload at times that were appropriate for him. It wasn't like Brad called up from work and said, Gwen, I got to talk to you about something. It was more like they would be on a trip. When this first came up, they were on a trip. They were on a missions trip to an orphanage. That's how it kicked up for him. And he started to share with Gwen, wow, there's something I've never told you. And she realized that this was going to be something he's going to need to unpackage over time. And she said, you know what, Brad, this is a good time to get started on this. Let's talk about this some more. You may need to see a professional about it, but I'm here for you. And Gwen wisely realized that Brad didn't just need to unload his feelings, but he needed to feel like she understood why he did what he did when he did it. In fact, he wanted Gwen to help him to understand himself. Gwen was very wise. She knew something about men. They don't just want to share feelings. They need to be in their linear way. They need to understand why did they accept the outcome that they accepted and what might they shift and change to alter that. And because Gwen gave him that space and Brad obviously talked to other people about it, and because Brad and Gwen had recipes from the people they were working with, he was able to work through that in a way that made him stronger. He was able to work through that in a way that made him more emotionally available to Gwen. He was able to work through that in a way that made him more emotionally available to his children because he didn't realize that guilt and shame had kept him from really connecting to them. So he didn't emote all over the place. He did it in specialized times and specialized ways. We're going to talk a lot more about this in upcoming episodes, guys. So stay tuned. What if, as leaders, as men, we were not only linear, not only goal-oriented, not only driven to accomplishment, but we were also relational with our partner, with our children, even with the people that we worked with. By relational, I mean emotionally available, fully emotionally available. See, if you want to lead, you can't be that first leader I talked about, the angry leader. Most of the men that I know are angry leaders. They either are leading with anger or they know that anger isn't good and they shut it off. And when they shut it off, they emotionally disconnect from their wives and their wives feel emotionally abandoned. Until we learn how to manage our anger in a way that feels appropriate to our partner, the relationship won't feel safe. And if the relationship doesn't feel safe, there won't be trust. And if there isn't safety and trust, there won't be vulnerability. And if there isn't vulnerability, there won't be intimacy. And if there isn't safety, trust, vulnerability, and intimacy, she will not let us truly lead when it's time for us to lead. And this is why true leadership is founded in self-awareness. It's about getting in touch with your true self, all of who you are. It's about shedding the lessons and restrictions of the man box that we talked about with John in one of the previous episodes. And like we outlined in the previous episodes, it's hard to get out of a box when the instructions are on the outside, right? And we've kind of been raised in this box. And here, let me just up the game a little. The urgency on this is growing because the culture is changing radically. Women are advocating to be leaders more and more. Women are advocating for self-expression. They're not just advocating for leadership and self-expression. They want partners who are emotionally available and strong. Some of you may be listening to this and they think that maybe I'm preaching being pussified. It's a crass term, right? And I could see why some of you might think that. Right? The image of masculinity that we've been handed is one of granite-like bedrock strength. But we can't be whole and complete human beings if we are granite-like bedrock strength. In fact, real bedrock strength is about being a whole human being. When we cut off ourselves from ourselves, when we separate ourselves from ourselves, we are incomplete by definition. A definition of manhood that does not permit the full range of emotion is not a real definition of manhood. It might be to be a good warrior under warfare conditions. We need to be that person. Can't grieve now, got to keep moving forward, need to kill the enemy, for survival. In a survival world, we maybe cannot afford to grieve. In a survival world, we maybe cannot afford to show hurt. Not feel hurt, just show hurt. But we're not in survival right now. We're in relationship. We're living here in America, at least, in a culture where there's greater abundance than the planet has ever seen in any other culture. And presumably, greater safety. The fact is, in 1925, most of us were defending our own homes because there wasn't adequate government, police force, whatever you want to call it, to truly protect our homes. But in 2025, we've got locks, alarm systems, bars, police up the wazoo. In 2025, for many of us, it's safer. And I'm not discounting that there are ghettos, and I'm not discounting those neighborhoods where there's gang violence and where the police are afraid to go. I'm just saying for most of us, if you're living in a neighborhood like that, maybe then yeah, you don't want to be pussified, wussified. I totally get it. I grew up in survival. But if you're not living in that, I want you to consider that you might have the space to embrace all of who you are, right? And the thing is that we get to choose. We get to choose. Hey, so if you like what you're hearing, subscribe, share this with other people. If you want more information, stay tuned because there's more coming. In the meantime, have an awesome day and a fantastic tomorrow.